I guess my real question is, when are our two ferns coming?
Not anytime soon, we'll just say that.
Okay, well, maybe I'll just go get
I'm not going to go fern shopping.
I'm going to go fern shopping. Welcome back to Sermon Rewind. My name is Todd, and as always, with me is Pastor Jordan Hall.
Afternoon.
We are, again, talking about a sermon, and we're ready to jump right in. You ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. So the title was pretty straightforward. 2 words, On Mission. Scripture was from the book of Mark, chapter 6, verses 7 to 13. And your big idea was every person in Christ is called to the missionary life.
Yeah.
You get that right?
You got it right.
Okay, fantastic. I can read a piece of paper. We're on the right track. So I want to jump right in and ask a question about your big idea. Because again, the whole idea here is for your big idea to resonate throughout and hopefully be remembered and hopefully be applied later on. So I looked up the word, and I don't know why I keyed in on this, but I looked up the word missionary in the dictionary. And the dictionary defines a missionary as, I quote, a person sent on a religious mission, especially one sent to promote Christianity in a foreign country. Mm-hmm. So quick backstory, I grew up in the church, and there would be people that would come and visit every once in a while who were missionaries, and they were in another country, and they'd tell us a few things about that country, and we'd just sort of listen to them. And I also had people say to me, going into the ministry, which typically referred to going to seminary and becoming a pastor and leading a church like you do. So my question to you is it possible that we, the church, maybe it's the Western church, maybe it's our specific church, who knows? Is it possible that we, the church, have convinced ourselves that only certain people have to go out and share the gospel? When people hear the word missionary, they hear go to a different country. But when you say missionary, you're implying that this includes all of us, and our mission field could be right next door. But if we convinced ourselves that there's only a small percentage of people that have to actually be missionaries.
Yes, actually. I was kind of hoping I could beat around the bush a little bit, but no, yeah, I think that is the case. There's a long-standing history behind it, I think, and I think there's a lot that contributes to that. But it's no different than, for example, people looking at the pastor and saying, well, it's your job to preach the gospel. It's your job to invite and encourage people to come to the faith, to surrender to Jesus. And it's your job to bring them up and plug them into the life of the church. And what I would say to that is what I would imagine, the same thing I would hope a missionary would say to the average layperson, and that is, yeah, not really. In fact, for my job is actually to shepherd you, to help build you up, to help equip you so that you can go out and do those things, right? My job is to impart, my job is to prepare so that you can go be as effectual, faithful, etc. in the world abroad. The same thing for the missionary. The missionary goes to a place often, or sometimes that's just next door, and they take up their responsibility therein. For some missionaries, they plant churches. Some missionaries create networks of, Christian fellowship and just health and safety for those who are maybe in more troubling environments. For some, they go and they do all kinds of social and medical work, right? It's not all one note. But when they land there, their job is to help bring about from the soil proper roots, and then as a result, to allow that thing to flourish well after they're gone, right? So that's no different. The problem is here in America in particular, we see it very differently. This person has a job. There's a vocation involved in it. I don't do that. I'm an insurance salesman. I'm a stay-at-home mom or dad, right? Like that's what they do. This is what I do. There's distinct lines. And the scriptures do not give us that kind of freedom to assume such a thing. It's just not in there. It is talking about normal, average, everyday people all the time, which includes you and I.
Yeah. So in your first point, and the first point was the substance of the missionary life. You were talking about content. You talked about the idea that the disciples were sent out in pairs. Buddy system, if you will, and you talked about the value of that pairing, that partnership provided support, but also accountability. Watching each other's backs, but also keeping them both in line, When one person's down, the other person's up,
Yep.
type of thing, and vice versa. So from a practical standpoint, should everybody in the church have an accountability partner? Not necessarily just a buddy, but is that a good mechanism to think about? And if so, how do we pair up if there are people that they don't disagree with what you're talking about, but they may not feel like they have to go out on a mission, even if it is next door. They may feel like their missionary days are behind them.
Yeah, I mean, those are two very different questions. So the first one, should everybody have an accountability partner? Like you said, humorously, probably not one designated person, right? Although that can be really robust and healthy for people to have that. And I encourage you, if you have close, intimate relationships within the church, you should foster them and continue to develop them over time. So if you can have that, fantastic. But if not, you should be building out faithfully the type of relationship with people in the local body that there is that kind of accountability, right? Like I know with you and I and many others, including my own counsel, I know these people have their eyes on my life. I know that they're invited into my life, and I willfully share areas of my life on purpose. When I'm struggling in sin, I tell people on my counsel about it. I don't hide it. Yes, I recognize that if it got severe and unchecked enough, that could be my job. But far more important to me than that is that I'm able to continue being a faithful minister of the gospel, right? That should be the concern of all people in the church, not whether or not Auntie Joe or Susie, six, people down the aisle might know some of my dirty laundry, and so therefore I'm not going to allow anybody to get close enough to me so that gets aired out. Not like that. I mean, that's a horrible way for us to be with one another. So a willingness that says, man, I need people, and I need people to know me. I need people to see me. I need people that'll walk arm in arm with me. And like you said, both hedge me in and protect me as well as lift me up when I fall. Now, the second part to that question was, what happens if there are people in the church who say, well, I'm not so sure I need to be on mission, or that's my job, or if that's my calling, or maybe I've done my part for the last 45, 50 years. Like, I'm okay to just coast now. I'll tell you right now, there's nothing that will break a pastor's heart more than hearing people talk like that. Frankly, you don't even know how to walk through that. Spurgeon said something to the effect years and years ago that if you don't have a desire in your heart to see lost people saved, there's a very good chance you are not saved yourself. And I think that rings true for us. If you're sitting in the pew and saying, I just don't have any real desire, I don't have anything burning up in me that says, man, I should go out and share this good news that I've been entrusted, or my next door neighbor who I know is struggling, like if there's nothing in me that says I need to go rock that boat and mess with that relationship, we got a good thing going. We wave at each other over the fence once in a while. That's good enough for me. I would be compelled to look at that person in my congregation and say, God bless you. You really need to evaluate your heart in light of the truth here. Because this radical reconciliation that happens in you, it forces you out to other people, right? You who were once hurting, who are now not hurting, your heart is now turned to the hurting to help get them out of that as well. So I don't know how to argue with a person who says, I just don't know that I'm interested in doing that. Then what exactly are you interested in? And why are you here? Like, I love you, but why are you here? Like, ask those big questions, because those things need to be answered for sure.
Okay. So in your second point, the second point was the structure of the ministry life. You were talking about how Jesus gave the disciples some sort of tangible instructions, mostly around packing and provisions. Don't take extra stuff. And the whole gist of that was, I'll provide for you. I'll take care of your needs. Don't put your comfort into packing a lot of extra food and clothes and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We're a planning society in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So, for example, let's say I have a 401k and I pay into a life insurance policy and I assemble emergency roadside kits for all of my cars, just in case there's an earthquake here in Southern California.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, those things give me a level of comfort. So am I not trusting in God enough to provide for my needs if I have those things?
I would not say that you are not trusting in God enough if you're a wise planner. I think wise planning is good. And I think it's a gracious thing that we here in the West have the privilege of being able to do that, to stock up, to plan for the worst case scenario, right? To have savings accounts and retirement accounts. Like that's a fantastic thing. I don't think this is exactly what that's talking about. Imagine a different scenario. Let's say you knew that there was something God was calling you to do, and you weren't quite sure you had enough to do it, right? I'll wait until I can save up enough to really take a year off from work to go and do that thing. Or I'm going to wait until, I've got my kids here, or I've got this loose end tied up. In the same way that there used to be people that would tell Jesus early on in the gospel, hey, I'll follow you wherever you go, but let me go home first and bury my dad. And Jesus said, well, let the dead bury the dead. Point of that is you're never going to be ready enough to get over that hump of insecurity and uncertainty that life is going to throw at you. A life on mission, the missionary life, is one that says, when he calls you, go. Be ready in and out of season to give an account for. Be ready to lay it all on the line. If you had to lose everything to gain it all in him, would you do it? Do you trust him enough? It's not to say that he's going to. I don't think he's going to call all people to abject poverty. Just like I said in the sermon, I don't think he likewise calls all of us to be super comfortable, well off, and well-to-do. I think that this has to do with how much we trust and are confident in Jesus to provide all of our needs, even and especially when that provision doesn't come in the form that we would expect or hope. That's more what I think is the concern. Do you trust him enough? Are you on board with him on mission enough? Do you believe that what is yet to come and yet to be revealed in him far outweighs any of the trappings or experiences this life has to offer? And as a result, would you be willingly able to forfeit them in order to follow him out to whatever that obvious end would be? That's what that's getting after. So I don't want to shout boo from the bandstands at those who have a 401k. It seems like a pretty awesome thing. And I don't want to say like, my goodness, I set aside money so my kids could go to college. Does that mean I'm a sinner? That has nothing to do with anything. This has to do with, if you are called, are you faithful whether you feel ready or not? Are you faithful whether you feel like you have enough or not, or you've experienced enough or not? That's the big question. And if you can answer that, then I think the rest of it kind of goes away.
Okay. So last question is about the third point, and that was the strategy of the missionary life. And you talked about your hope for our little congregation of Bethany. We're not a particularly large church, but we're in this community. We've been in this community for a lot of years. Yeah. Your hope that we would be a missionary post, that we would be known in the community for joyfully sharing the beautiful, lofty, glorious vision of Jesus Christ. That when people think of Bethany, they think of Christ followers. Yeah. If I can put you on the spot, which I'm going to do, if you were going to be lovingly candid, where are we right now as a body?
Well, I would say, and I hope this doesn't seem too safe, it is honest, I would say we're probably where most evangelical churches are in the States. And all I mean by that is that we are somewhere in between completely falling off people's radar of importance and somewhere nearer to where Jesus would have us live and be a salt and light to the earth. I don't know that we are all irrelevant or all unhelpful. I don't know that we are all white hot and exuberantly challenging the world to think beyond themselves. I think more often than not, we probably are the former, right? And sadly, I think a lot of that has to do with a lack of vision for Jesus ourselves. I ended that sermon saying it would be a huge mistake if what I said to you was, if you would just enlist for your job, take the missionary call and be on mission, then you would arrive. That would be a huge mistake, because that's not going to do it. It's not going to cut it. We've had preachers for countless years yelling at people from the podiums and the pulpits, go and do and go and be. And we have no lack of information from the Bible, no lack of pontification from theology, no lack of clarion calls coming forth that would tell us to go and be. It has nothing to do with that. If we don't see Jesus as worthy, truly worthy, we won't budge. We're not going to. No one picks this life for no reason. So I would say the great concern, or maybe the reason why we are falling off the radar into obscurity, is because we are losing a vision of Jesus' worth. We are losing a vision and a heartbeat and a desire to make him known because he is worth it. The one who bled, the one who died is worth my losing my life to gain it in him. He's worth it. So if I don't ever get to be what I wanted to be, he's worth it. If I don't ever get to have what I wanted to have, he's worth it. If my neighbors don't necessarily love me because every opportunity that I can seize, I will in order to help direct them to the one who loves them and will save them from an obvious and certain death, he's worth it. And I'll do that. Christians have teetered far from that. So, my admonition is that we would do whatever it takes to regain the missionary life. And it has to start right then and there. We have to see Jesus as worthy. Peter had to see it. James had to see it. John had to see it. Paul had to see it, right? We all had to see it. And once we see it, our lives are changed forever. And they will continually be changed forever as a result.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us on Sermon Rewind. Please leave your questions and comments in the comments section on YouTube. And also subscribe and share so that we can get these conversations out to more people. Thanks for tuning in.
See you soon.